Hello, everyone, and welcome to Reality. My name is William, and I'm here with Lev. How are you doing, Lev?
I'm great today. Hey everyone.
Today, we're going to jump right into our topic of virtue signaling. I believe this concept entered the culture around 2015. There was an article written by James Bartholomew called Easy Virtue. It appeared in The Spectator, and he pointed to this phenomenon that he was trying to conceptualize where people indicate through statements that they're virtuous. And he kind of saw it as a pejorative term. He was kind of saying there's something wrong with the way they were doing this. One of the examples he gave was Whole Foods advertising in their stores where they say values matter and they say they're part of some growing consciousness, and that sort of thing. And so he's saying that they were indicating that they're kind and decent and virtuous through their statements, but maybe not necessarily so because it's just a statement and it seems boastful to him. He also gave an example of a more indirect form of virtue signaling, and he's from Britain, so he gave a British example of someone on the Today show in Britain, Michelle Hussein, insinuating that Nigel Farage is a racist, and therefore suggesting or implying that she has the correct liberal opinion. So those were kind of his examples. He saw virtue signaling as either a direct form or an indirect form of publicly expressing your view and indicating your virtue. Would you like to add anything to that opening, Lev?
I mean, I get the distinction that he's making in the way people use the term, but my issue with it is mostly that it doesn't seem much different than bragging or simply pride. Because if you're prideful, you're just showing your virtues always, or showing these characteristics, which of course some people won't like it or they'll see it as negative, but it seems like a thing that you would usually want to show. So I don't really see the issue so much of why it has to be, or why anyone has to see as always so negative. It doesn't have to be negative. It can be a very good thing. Like, you should show your virtues. People want to emulate those virtues, and it's good if people emulate you for your virtues.
I think there is a proper form of expressing your virtues, and I think that might be called like reporting your virtues. I think there's a valid way to do it if you're just reporting what you have done and saying, this is me, this is what I do with my life, and I believe it's correct. So I think Bartholomew was coming from a more Christian morality. I don't know if he's actually a Christian, but he brought up the idea of the Christian view of pride being a sin. So he kind of attached that to his concept of virtue signaling.
Yeah, that's
But
interesting.
I like to think of it as, the correct way of doing it. I like to think of it as maybe virtue reporting, and just being more objective about it. One thing I do like about the concept of virtue signaling is I think it tries to get at a bad way of expressing your virtue. And I think it's more of like a false signal. You could be saying that you're virtuous or you do something that's good, but it's not true. It's a fraud. It's a lie. You're doing it for bad purposes. And so therefore it's like a false signal.
Well, if it is virtuous, why would it be for just what do you mean by a bad reason? Exactly what would be a bad reason to do those things if they believe it's virtuous?
I think a bad reason would be choosing the group over the truth. Like if you want to get along with someone or get along with a group, and you decide you're going to evade what's true, what's actually virtuous, and you're just going to go along with what the group is saying to do, or what you think the group believes as a whole. I think that would be a bad reason. It would be second-handed. It wouldn't be individualistic.
Well, in that sense, sure, but that's dependent on your views of morality. Already, I'm just trying to distinguish just the general sense of somebody wants to act virtuous, so they do so. It could be not real virtues, but their intention is to be virtuous. So even if it was for the group, if they believe it was virtuous, then they should do that if that's what they really believe. So of course they should. I mean, we might think it's immoral for that end, but as far as acting virtuous, they truly believe they are. It's not fraudulent, it's just wrong. I think there's a difference between being fraudulent versus just being wrong.
Yeah, I think if they are being dishonest, you'd have to prove that. You have to show that. Yeah. I think it does happen, though. I mean, it's a pretty common thing for people to, not do what they think is right in order to succeed in business or their career or whatever. They'll be silent on certain issues that they disagree with just to get along. I think that's a problem, especially if there's no real negative consequence to telling the truth or saying what you believe. I think if you're just doing it to make everyone feel better, that's a real problem. I think it's going to hurt you as an individual too, because it's going to ruin your ability to be true to yourself and know what's actually virtuous. And if you aren't doing what is good for your life, that's going to have negative consequences on you.
And I agree with that the implications could be negative and you could be against it for that reason. But it's weird to me when people think of virtue signaling as something bad, or especially when if you disagree with somebody's virtues, those people usually would say find nefarious reasons why they disagree, not just that they disagree about what is virtuous. Like when people say you're virtue signaling, so it just seems like they're saying that you're virtue signaling and you don't really believe this, that you're just manipulating people. It's why go to that extra level? I mean, just say that they're wrong. Why this level of virtue signaling as manipulation?
Yeah, I think that probably comes from the pride is a sin view.
True.
This negative view of people boasting about their virtue. Even the word boast has a negative connotation. If you're not into declaring your virtues and spreading your morality openly, you might look down upon someone who does that in public. And that's why you have this negative view of virtue signaling. And I think signaling is the wrong word, probably. Now that signaling is too neutral for this concept that's loaded with a moral evaluation.
Yeah, I mean, we could say that virtue signaling is a loaded term. It implies too much. It implies things that we don't want to imply, or it's mixed up with faulty ideas. There's good and bad to the idea. I mean, it's true that signaling or demonstrating virtue is important. I mean, but write a different word is probably better. This one's just too many connotations and assumptions. What word would you use? I mean, you said reporting, but that also sounds too neutral, just a mere action, no moral value to it.
Virtue. I can't think of a word off the top of my head, but it'd have to be a word that, right. It'd have to be a word that means saying something for show. It's not, you're not being serious about it. You're not actually reporting a real virtue or real action that you do yourself. It's virtue showmanship or something like that. It's
just fraudulent virtue. It's just fraudulent. I mean, I don't think there's anything more to it.
Virtue fraud. Yeah.
I mean, there's probably other terms.
Virtue conning. You're trying to con people into thinking you're virtuous.
I mean, that's what we're trying to point out. And I don't want to condemn people for doing what they believe is right. I'd condemn them, though, almost more people for lying or being fraudulent. I mean, I think honesty, at least, is more important, even if it's something I believe is wrong. At least that person is acting on their belief. I think it's worse to lie about it, or lie about your beliefs, or manipulate people for those ends.
If we had a different term for it, then you could actually debate, is it real fraud? Are they really fraudulent about virtue expression? So it wouldn't just be a signal. And also another problem with the word signal is that it's really an indirect means of communication. A signal is really nonverbal in my view. You're not saying to someone directly what you believe. You're giving an indication, like giving the finger to somebody or doing some signal, like with a flag, or something like that, where it's nonverbal. So the added problem is using this virtue signal to mean a statement that someone's making.
Yeah, that's where it gets complicated. Yes, a signal is, you don't even know what it is necessarily. I mean, there's good reason to understand what they're saying, but not why. It doesn't give you the why. It doesn't give you their motivation. It just gives you the action, which is important, but motivation is much more difficult to figure out. We can look at if somebody's hypocritical based on their past. That could work, or statements they've made, but not just the signal alone, isolated from others. Like, you can't judge even like somebody giving you the finger isolated. I mean, friends can do it to each other as a joke, or people who, strangers, are probably trying to insult each other. In that context matters, the past and all that, not merely the signal, but what's the circumstances around their beliefs and the signal itself and the relationship to who they're showing. I mean, if you're virtue signaling to people you already agree with, then it's usually like beneficial to the group. It's not negative, it's not manipulative. It's just straight up like, oh, hey guys, I do this thing that we all like, so let's rejoice and be happy that we're all doing this thing that we believe in. I mean, I'd praise anybody for that. Like, you're in group feeling, it's good to share your values like that. But it would be manipulative, like they tried to enter another group and just wanted their favor, but didn't believe in any of it. That would be very different.
Intent is a big part of it. Like you were saying, the other person that you're signaling to, they have to understand your intent. So if you're using words to say something, those words have a universal definition you could look up online, and then they might have other definitions that certain groups use for those words. So you have to know how the other person is going to interpret your signal. That's an issue. That's a problem, because now when you have someone interpreting someone else's virtue signal, they're assuming what that other person meant to someone else. So it's like a third-hand observation of a virtue signal, and you're removing yourself. You're not part of that context where the virtue signal was sent.
Can you think of an example that we can make this more concrete?
Well, let's look at, I don't know if this is going to work, but some examples I had were from the George Floyd riots. So you had people protesting, and they would hold signs like they support BLM, Black Lives Matter, and in some cases, you would see businesses put signs in their window saying Black-owned business. And I think these were signals to the rioters or the protesters to say, we agree with your message. Therefore, the implication is, don't burn down our business. Let us protest with you, that sort of thing. I'm part of your protest. I'm part of your movement. And then people who look on that from the outside, they might see it differently. They might attach some other interpretation to it. I don't know what that would be, but what do you think of that?
I think that works. I might have a better example, or that isn't so deep with so many implications, just more simple example. I think that'd be complicated to analyze. So I think of this commercial I watched where people saying like it's about a bank or something, but they're saying what they want to spend their money on, like whatever they want to spend money on, like business or whatever. And this one guy, this white guy, probably upper class, wearing a biker jacket, and he just says, I want to support Black-owned businesses. It's like, why is he even saying that? He looks just like he's doing well in life, and why does he care about Black-owned businesses specifically? Like, it doesn't seem like there's any reason he would say it, but he's just saying it anyway. And there's no political reason there. There's no safety reason. There's no other reason to be pragmatic about it. He's just saying it. I want to support Black businesses. And that's almost like a good example of a virtue signal, because it seems like he's not in the group that, or like he's signaling something to a group that he's not a part of. Like, he's not Black, obviously. Doesn't look like he's like some part of some real activist. And he's just saying, oh, look at me, people. You can trust me. I'm part of you. But he doesn't know their language. He doesn't know they're speaking. He doesn't know them, the context of these people he's speaking to. I say know their language, I mean like what it means to support a business, or what it means, or whatever lingo that people use who are like Black activists. It's disingenuous on his part, it seems.
Yeah, so if you were to ask him why does he want to support Black businesses, he might not have a good answer, because he's just trying to convey, some conformity with the group, or some indication that you should think he's moral because he just said that.
Yeah, like his signal isn't effective. His signal's like, you can see the signal, but like everybody knows, like it doesn't seem like it's signaling to the right people, that the people don't know how to read it. Like it can't be translated to the context. Like if you're a Black activist, like what are you saying? Like it seems disingenuous. Like you're not doing anything. You're just sitting there saying something without action. Like the white people who say they support BLM or really don't do anything. It's weird like that. And even to the people that don't agree, it's like why are you saying that, man? Do you really care that they're Black-owned businesses with that regard for their quality? It's like, who are you trying to convince? Just himself. Like neither the people, neither the activists, nor his own friends. It's fraudulent, really. He's not even part of, he doesn't know how to use a signal.
You're looking at it from concrete analytical view of the commercial. But if we were to take a step back and look at it as a commercial for that bank,
yeah,
it's the bank saying that in their commercial. The bank is signaling to the viewers of that commercial on TV that they are supporting Black businesses. So they're trying to say the bank, we as a bank are moral because we support Black businesses.
Yeah. It was very weird to me, like just saying you support Black businesses. Or I guess the individual, but the bank too, yeah. When they decided to include all this, include all that information. I mean, just that one bit. The others made sense, but this one seems so fake. A white guy saying, I support Black businesses, isolated from anything, it just feels so fraudulent, so fake.
I have another one from the football world. So Tom Brady is one of the best players ever in football. And when it became known that he was a friend of Trump, then you started seeing people virtue signal indirectly by saying, I don't like Tom Brady.
I mean, that one seems fair. I mean, as vapid as their moral reasoning is, it's still a real reason, as bad as it is, and as ignorant as they were before. They know now, and now they're acting this way. I mean, it makes sense. It bothers me that they're so blind to their own moral beliefs and they don't think about it, but nonetheless, it's still real.
James Bartholomew, he used J.K. Rowling as an example where J.K. Rowling came out against transgenderism. In my view, it's kind of like the Tom Brady example where people are trying to indicate their virtue by saying, I don't like J.K. Rowling. There is a reason in it, but it's because of something like really unrelated to her work. Like for Tom Brady, he's a football player. So, I mean, why wouldn't you like Tom Brady as a football player because he supports Trump? It's not really related. And for J.K. Rowling, why would you burn her books just because she's against transgenders or something like that?
As far as like J.K. Rowling, and part of that signaling there is that they don't even understand what they're signaling against sometimes. Like J.K. Rowling she never said like, I hate transgender people, or they're not real, or anything that's truly transphobic. But people jump on the bandwagon assuming she did and just signaling those that they're against. Like, I hate you without understanding how they'll interpret it. Like the interpretation would be like, you don't understand what I'm for. You're protesting something that's not even true. It's a virtue signal, but it doesn't work against the person. It's supposed to be judging. A proper signal would be that the person seeing your signal that you're against knows what it means, and the people you're with also knows what it means. There's no confusion about what you're standing for or whose side you're on.
One of the problems might be that our language has been so corrupted that it's hard to understand what people mean by words anymore. So we come up with this concept of virtue signaling to say, well, this is what I think they mean. This is the virtue I think they're trying to express. So it's kind of a recognition that there's this communication problem. But if I can bring up another example, and I'll try again with the Black Lives Matter, but this time I want to focus on something Larry Elder said. When he was asked about Black Lives Matter, he pointed out that they show interest and concern with police brutality, and they say it's, police are racist and there's this problem of institutional racism in America. But Larry Elder says, but when it comes to inner city gang murders, like such as all the black murders in Chicago where black kids are killing black kids, BLM is nowhere to be seen. So he says that that's hypocritical. They don't seem interested in Black lives when it comes to gang murders.
Yeah.
Do you think that's an example of virtue signaling where Black lives will say, we're for Black lives, but then on the other hand, they're not when it comes to blacks killing blacks in Chicago?
I mean, it could be. I think it just reflects communication issues, because clearly there is a disagreement about the cause of that problem in Black communities, that they don't know how to communicate their views. That if you're really into the discourse of BLM, then, and you signal a virtue, someone like Larry Elder probably won't pick up on everything you would be signaling to people that recognize your understanding of the discourse and issues and specifics and concretes. Not that Larry Elder couldn't, but he's not taking a full understanding of what they're saying to criticize their authenticity. You could be right to criticize them on their moral worth or morally what they're saying, but not about their authenticity or their fraudulence of their beliefs. I mean, they could still be totally honest, but just something like Larry Elder doesn't quite understand the language used, exactly what they're conveying. It's like you can understand to get a gist of what somebody says in, like, say Spanish, but you don't understand Spanish. Like, you might know some words and you go, oh, I think I know what they said, but you don't really until you get a full translation. And then you could understand, are they fraudulent? Are they being genuine? What's going on?
So you're saying that Larry Elder's taking it out of the BLM context. They're applying the statement to police racism and brutality, and he's taking it and applying it elsewhere.
Yeah, not that he's necessarily wrong, just that his criticisms aren't addressing what they believe is the problem. Doesn't mean he's wrong, it's just there's a communication barrier between the two people. Even the BLM people probably think he's oversimplifying and ignoring or supporting white supremacy, but not understanding where he's coming from. So then they'll say, like, he's virtue signaling. He's the one who doesn't know what he's talking about. It's a communication barrier. There's no way to know who's authentic or not.
Another aspect of this is the academic roots of virtue signaling. There's some argument to be made, I think, through evolutionary psychology that other animals kind of signal their good qualities, like mating rituals, like birds will dance around and show how physical and how good they are at moving around, and maybe that signals to the female, oh, this is going to be a good mate because he can do a lot of things and he can run off and get sticks for nests and he'll be physically active and be a good partner. Not that they think of it like that in those terms, but it's just this action of signaling to somebody else. And in cases of animals, it's often nonverbal too, which gets back to my point that this is a bad word to use. We shouldn't use signaling because, signaling is nonverbal and we communicate verbally usually. But when you get to the evolutionary psychology aspect of it, we do see these animal mating rituals, which are usually nonverbal, I guess. I don't know. I guess sometimes there's songbirds and things like that. But what do you think of that?
I think that's, well, I don't like the connection with evolution, but it does show you the value of signals and what they do for communication specifically. I mean, because they don't have language, but birds communicate with each other. And you could say that that's the way they signal things. They signal with their body, with their qualities, and they try to convince the bird to mate with them. And there is a value in it. I mean, I wouldn't say it's evolutionary, but I mean, it's the way that any conscious sensing organism would find value in.
It seems like just a method of communication. Like
Right.
at the root, it's animals communicate with each other through movements and sounds, and we're an animal, so we communicate through movements and sounds.
Yeah.
And so virtue signaling is just another way of trying to communicate something to somebody, but it's trying to communicate virtue. At the essence, I guess that's what it is, but there is this pejorative connotation being attached to it. So I think there is a problem with the concept, calling it virtue signaling. I think there needs to be more refinement to it.
Yeah, there really needs to be. Is there anything else you want to add to this conversation before we go?
Well, I think that pretty much covers all the aspects of virtue signaling that we wanted to talk about. I thank you very much for talking to me about it, and I think we still need to think about it some more. It's such a new concept that we probably don't have all the facts and examples we need to come to a better understanding of the phenomenon and what's going on, actually. So I look forward to thinking about it more and talking to you about it more in the future.
Yep. It's good talking to you. Bye, everyone.